In the oldest of days, before the binding of Fenrir and long before the twilight of the gods, there came into Asgard a figure whose name still glimmers with dread and wonder, Gullveig. Her name means gold drunk or gold strong, and she was as dangerous as the metal from which her being seemed woven. For though gold gleamed with beauty, it also lured men and gods alike into greed, strife, and ruin, and in Gullveig, that hunger took living form. No skald could say with certainty whence she came. Some claimed she was of the Vanir, kin to Freya, daughter of that bright tribe of fertility and sorcery. Others whispered she was older still, a spirit born from the earth's molten heart, rising from the deep places where treasure lies hidden. Yet all agreed, she bore with her the arts of seeress, the witchcraft that twists fate, bends minds, and weaves fortune from shadows. When she walked into the halls of the Æsir, she brought with her both beauty and terror. Her hair gleamed like hammered gold, her eyes shone with fire, and her presence unsettled even Odin All-Father. Wherever she turned, the lords of Asgard felt their hearts stirred by desire, yet also by envy and mistrust. For in her gleam they saw not only wealth but the endless hunger that wealth awakens. It was said that she carried treasures unlike any the gods had seen, ornaments of rare craft, bright metals that glowed as if with their own light, and stones that pulsed with hidden power. But greater than her gifts was her sorcery. She promised visions, offered secrets, and whispered of how destiny might be bent like iron in the forge. And thus the Æsir found themselves torn, some craved her gifts, others despised her cunning. So began the shadow that would fall across the world. For in Gullveig was bound the two forces that most rouse strife, the lust for gold and the power of forbidden magic. She was both treasure and curse, both guest and threat. Her coming into Asgard was not merely the arrival of a wanderer, but the spark of a fire that would blaze into war, the first great war of the gods themselves. And though her tale is told in fragments, the poets remembered her as the indestructible one, who endured fire and death, who rose anew each time, gleaming brighter than before. She was the one the Æsir could not kill, the one whose presence revealed their fear and their greed. To know Gullveig is to know the truth of power, that gold shines, but its gleam may blind, and that magic grants strength, but at a cost no god can easily bear. Thus the skalds sing, before the end there was a beginning, and in that beginning there was Gullveig, whose coming split the gods as a sword splits wood, whose name was both treasure and doom. It is told in the songs of the Volur that one night, beneath a sky blazing with the northern lights, a stranger came to the gates of Asgard. Her cloak shimmered as if woven from threads of fire, her eyes glinted like polished amber, and her hands bore ornaments of strange design, wrought from purest gold. This was Gullveig, the wanderer, the sorceress, the living embodiment of treasure's power. The gods, curious yet wary, led her into their halls. At first she was received as a guest, for hospitality was sacred among the Æsir. Odin himself granted her a place at the fire, and the Valkyries poured mead into her cup. She smiled, her lips curving like the edge of a blade, and from her cloak she drew out trinkets that dazzled the eye, rings of molten light, chains that shimmered like sun on water, stones that burned with hidden flame. The gods marveled, for though they possessed riches beyond mortal measure, these gifts shone with a strange, unsettling brilliance. But Gullveig brought more than wealth. She spoke of seeress, the deep magic of the Vanir, a craft the Æsir scarcely knew. She spoke of weaving minds as one weaves cloth, of binding the will of others, of turning fate itself. Her words held allure, for in them lay power that even Odin longed to master. Yet her speech also unsettled, for she spoke with a knowing that pierced the heart like a spear. Some of the Æsir leaned close, hungry for her secrets. Loki, ever curious, whispered questions. Frigg listened with suspicion, weighing the danger of this stranger. Freya, if indeed Gullveig was her kin, regarded her with a gaze both tender and wary. And Odin, high upon his seat, pondered deeply, for he desired wisdom above all, yet feared what wisdom bought with gold and sorcery might cost. It was not long before discord stirred. For the more Gullveig revealed, the more the gods quarreled among themselves. Some claimed she was a gift, a teacher sent by fate. Others called her a corrupter, a poisoner who sowed greed. And all the while Gullveig sat calmly at the fire, her eyes gleaming with quiet triumph, as though she knew the divisions she kindled would only grow. The skalds say her laughter was like the chime of gold upon stone, soft, alluring, but carrying a sharpness that could cut. She needed no sword, no spear, no shield, her weapons were her beauty, her wealth, her magic, and the hunger she awakened in others. The Æsir, though mighty, found themselves ensnared, for she had shown them a mirror of their own desires. Thus the hall of the gods, once bound in strength, began to fracture. Gullveig's arrival was not simply a visit, it was the planting of a seed, the root of mistrust, the spark of envy. And from that moment forward, the harmony of the Æsir trembled, for in their midst now dwelt the power of gold, and the lure of sorcery, in the form of one indestructible woman. It is told that the discord grew too great for the Æsir to bear. The lords of Asgard, proud and wrathful, gathered in council, and their words rang like steel upon stone. Many demanded that Gullveig be cast out, for her presence had set brother against brother, husband against wife, and had stirred desires that even gods could not master. Yet others wished to keep her, to learn more of her secrets. At last, the will of the majority prevailed, and they declared her a corrupter, a bringer of ruin. Thus they chose to destroy her. In the hall of Odin, before the high seat and beneath the carvings of ancient runes, they built a pyre of great logs. Gullveig was bound, her treasures cast aside, and the flames were kindled. Fire roared upward, devouring the wood, licking her skin, consuming her body. The gods stood stern as the heat surged. They thought her undone, yet in the heart of the blaze she laughed, a sound like the breaking of chains. At last her body fell to ash, and the Æsir believed the threat had ended. But when the embers cooled, from the blackened ruin she rose again, whole and shining, as if the fire had polished her rather than destroyed her. Her hair gleamed brighter, her eyes glowed fiercer, and she walked among them unharmed. The gods recoiled, astonished and angered. A second time they seized her, binding her with stronger cords, piling the pyre higher. Again they set her aflame, and again her form was consumed. Smoke filled the hall, sparks leapt to the rafters, and the gods watched as her figure crumbled into nothingness. Yet when the fire waned, there she stood once more, radiant, untamed, her smile a dagger in the hearts of her foes. Fury overtook them. For a third time they cast her into the fire, believing no creature could endure such trial. The flames roared so fiercely that even the gods stepped back from the heat. The pyre collapsed into coals, and Gullveig's form vanished in the blaze. Silence fell as smoke curled to the roof. But then, through the haze, she rose again, reborn, undying, shining as though fire itself had become her ally. This was the moment when the Æsir knew she could not be slain. 3 times they had tried, 3 times she had returned, stronger and more terrible than before. To them she was no longer a guest, nor even a foe of flesh and blood, she was indestructible will, the hunger for wealth and power made flesh. And in her triple burning the fate of the gods was sealed. For the outrage of her treatment would echo across the worlds, and the Vanir, her kin, would not forgive such cruelty. The war of gods was now inevitable. Gullveig had endured fire, and in so doing she became the flame that would set the worlds alight. The 3 burnings of Gullveig did not pass quietly into silence. Word flew swifter than ravens across the 9 realms, and it reached the ears of the Vanir, the gods of fertility, wealth, and sorcery. They were a proud people, dwelling in Vanaheim, bound to the earth's cycles and the deep arts of magic. Gullveig, whether daughter, priestess, or spirit of their kind, was theirs. When they heard how the Æsir had bound her, burned her, and sought to destroy her thrice, rage surged in their hearts like storm tide against shore. Thus began the first war of the gods, a war so great that even the skalds, who could recount the clash of Ragnarok, spoke of it in tones of awe. The Æsir and the Vanir, once allies in the ordering of the cosmos, now turned spear against spear, spell against spell. The Æsir, masters of battle and storm, sent forth their champions. Odin hurled his spear Gungnir, swearing never to withhold his wrath. Thor raised Mjolnir, his hammer booming like thunder across the sky. Tyr, god of war, guided their hosts with unyielding discipline. They sought to crush the Vanir as one crushes stone beneath iron. But the Vanir were no less mighty. Freyr, lord of harvest and prosperity, raised his shining sword, which fought of its own accord. Njord commanded the sea, sending floods against the fields of the Æsir. Freya, mistress of seeress, wove spells that tangled the minds of warriors, turning friend against friend, brother against brother. Their strength was not only in arms but in cunning and enchantment. The battles shook the realms. Asgard's walls cracked beneath the Vanir's assault, while Vanaheim's fields burned under the storm of Thor. The air was filled with the clash of steel, the roar of thunder, the cries of warriors struck by spells unseen. No victory was won, for each triumph was undone by new cunning, and each loss was answered with greater fury. In the heart of the strife stood Gullveig. Though no saga tells of her bearing sword or shield, her spirit was present in every blow. For it was she who had lit the flame, she who endured the fire, she who revealed the greed and mistrust in the hearts of the Æsir. In every spear cast, in every curse uttered, her name echoed like the tolling of a bell. At last the gods grew weary. Neither Æsir nor Vanir could claim mastery, and their war threatened to unravel the very fabric of the 9 realms. So they sought peace. Hostages were exchanged, oaths were sworn, and the 2 tribes joined in truce. Njord, Freyr, and Freya came to dwell in Asgard, while Honir and Mimir were sent to the Vanir. Thus unity was forged from bloodshed, and the gods stood stronger than before. Yet the memory of Gullveig lingered. She had been the spark of the war, the living truth that gold and greed could divide even immortals. Though peace was sworn, the fire she ignited smoldered still, waiting for the day when such divisions would again blaze into ruin. For in her endurance lay a warning, that no power, once unleashed, may be wholly bound. Though the truce ended the war of the gods, Gullveig did not vanish. She could not. Fire had tried to unmake her thrice, yet thrice she rose, indestructible. Her name, however, began to change. Among men and gods alike, she came to be known as Æsir, the Bright One, a seeress who wandered from hall to hall, weaving fate and teaching the arts of seer. As Æsir she was not bound to Asgard, nor did she dwell in Vanaheim. Instead she walked among the worlds, appearing at the hearths of kings and the huts of farmers. She carried no weapon, save her staff, carved with runes that whispered secrets. Wherever she went, she spoke of visions. The fortunes of families, the outcomes of battles, the fates of rulers yet unborn. Her prophecies brought awe and dread, for she revealed truths that no one wished to hear, and yet none dared ignore. It was through her that seer spread among humankind. She taught women to weave spells as they wove cloth, to bind the wills of men, to soften hearts or harden them like stone. She taught how to send one's spirit forth, to travel unseen, to seek wisdom in dreams. She taught of charms to heal and curses to destroy, of ways to summon storms and still them again. Many feared her craft, calling it deceitful, unmanly, a twisting of nature, but they used it nonetheless, for its power could not be denied. The skalds say that even Odin All-Father learned from her. For though he was lord of runes and master of wisdom, seer was not his art, it was the gift of the Vanir. And Odin, ever hungry for knowledge, bent his pride to gain what Æsir could teach. From her he learned how to alter fate's threads, how to shift the course of war, how to send forth his spirit in raven shape. Yet for all he mastered, there was a price, seer marked him, so that others mocked his craft as unworthy of a warrior. Still, Odin bore the shame, for wisdom was dearer to him than honor. Thus Gullveig lived on as Æsir, the unyielding wanderer. She was hated and revered, shunned and sought after. Some kings tried to banish her, yet when famine struck they begged her return. Some warriors called her a corrupter, yet when war loomed they listened to her counsel. Always she endured, her presence a reminder that truth and magic are not easily silenced. In the sagas she is glimpsed, never grasped fully, sometimes as Gullveig the gold drunk, sometimes as Æsir the prophetess. But in all guises she bore the same essence, the untamable spirit, the spark of desire and power that no fire, no spear, no oath could bind. The skalds who sang of Gullveig never forgot her, though her tale was spoken more in hints than in long sagas. For she was not a goddess of temples nor a queen of halls, but a power, a presence, a living riddle. To the Æsir she was the flame that revealed their greed. To the Vanir she was a victim, their kin tormented. To humankind she was both curse and gift, the wanderer who brought forbidden arts. In her, every heart saw a mirror of its own hunger. In kennings, the poets likened gold itself to Gullveig. They called it her flame, her fire, her gift and her bane. For just as gold gleams fair yet drives men to bloodshed, so too did Gullveig shine with beauty that brought division. She was the undying truth that wealth and desire are forces no blade can master. Her 3 burnings became a tale told around hearths, not merely as history but as warning. Fathers cautioned their sons, beware the hunger for gold, for it rises anew each time you think it slain. Mothers told their daughters, even the fire cannot silence a will unbroken. Warriors muttered her name when they saw their leaders quarrel over plunder, and kings cursed her when greed hollowed their thrones. Some say she was none other than Freya herself in another guise, testing the Æsir with the power of gold and sorcery. Others claimed she was a spirit of the earth's veins, the living heart of treasure, indestructible as the ore buried in stone. And still others whispered that she was older than gods, a being born in Ginnungagap, the yawning void, who would outlast even Ragnarok. Yet always she returned in memory when men spoke of desire too great to master. Her rebirths were not only of fire, but of remembrance. Each age that tried to bury her name found her rising again, reshaped, but unforgotten. Even Odin, who had sought to master her craft, could not escape her shadow. His quest for wisdom bore the mark of Eir's teaching, and through him, the fate of gods and men alike carried the thread she had spun. For though she wandered far, her legacy clung like smoke after fire, unseen yet suffocating. Thus Gullveig endures. She is more than a woman, more than a goddess, more than an enemy burned and reborn. She is the symbol of what cannot be destroyed, the hunger for wealth, the lure of power, the endurance of the will. In her the Norse saw that some forces are eternal, as bright and as terrible as gold itself. And so, when the seeress in Völuspá spoke of the doom of gods, she remembered first the burning of Gullveig. For in that act was revealed the truth of all things, that fire may consume, but it cannot unmake what is rooted in the heart.